My name's Christopher King, and I'll be your host today. I am a partner at Valstroom, which is a consulting firm that specializes in setting up and delivering large, complex programs that are multifaceted, very similar to the ones we see in the payments programs today. Before we kick off, I'd just like to draw your attention to the housekeeping. By all means, you can ping us or chat with us using the Join the Conversation tab on the right. And if you have a question for us, which we would encourage, and hopefully we get time for that because we've got a lot to get through today, I think. But you would click the Ask the Speaker section. And just a reminder that your video and mic has been turned off, so don't get frustrated clicking it away. It ain't going to work. All right, so to contextualize the topic that we're in and frame it a little better, we're not going to be debating the pros and cons or agile versus waterfall. We're here to kind of look at how they can best coexist with each other within one program. You may have heard a slightly pessimistic term like water scrum or scrumathor, which is often used to describe the no man's land where one is forced to play American football and European soccer on the same field simultaneously. But essentially, mixing methodology is not necessarily about shoehorning one methodology into another or forcing one group to adopt a particular framework over another. Mixing agile and waterfall should really be about benefiting all stakeholders, improving delivery through increased visibility. And joining me today to discuss what this means for banks, vendors, and stakeholders in the payments environment are four experts to provide their perspectives on this subject, because they're in the thick of it, and we're keen to hear what they are. Let me ask each panelist to introduce themselves briefly and provide a quick glimpse into their chosen framework that they're using for delivery. Jessica, let me start with you.
Yeah, sure, Chris. First off, I just want to say thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be part of this insightful discussion with my fellow panelists and looking to learn from them and about what their respective organizations are doing. So very excited to be here. As for my introduction, I'm Jessica Lerro, and I'm the Director of Technology Transformation at Interac, where our mission is to empower Canadians to transact digitally with confidence by providing payment and value exchange services. And at Interac, I lead the Agile practice, and we've been on a multi-year transformation journey to becoming an Agile organization. So in terms of the delivery frameworks that we use, we do have a good mix. We're definitely moving more towards Agile, but we still have a lot of projects that still follow the standard waterfall methodology, just because it does make sense to do that for certain types of work. And then we also have a number of large strategic programs that sort of use that hybrid model that uses a mix of waterfall and Agile, or scrumathor, as you mentioned, Chris. But ultimately, the philosophy at Interac is that we basically choose a framework that will work for us and work for the unique context and environment of Interac. So, even within the realm of Agile, there's dozens of frameworks out there that have been developed over the last couple decades. But what we do is we sort of pick and choose the good practices that are going to work for us from several different models that fit the specific needs and culture of Interac.
Okay. David?
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you all. I'm David Chance. I'm VP of Strategy and Innovation at Fiserv, working in the Treasury, Commercial and Surround Solutions, really providing solutions to banks and financial institutions to process payments, to identify fraud, and to do all of the settlement, liquidity and reconciliation. I joined Fiserv, part of the acquisition of Dovetail. Dovetail was a small company that grew a payments product, a payment services hub, and obviously as part of that, we had to develop our own way of creating the project program controls to both develop the product as well as then implement it with our clients. So because we have sort of two different focuses, we've adopted an agile process for our own product development, but then we've created a sort of a hybrid approach to fit in with the way that our clients implement products and solutions.
Okay, thanks. Lamia?
Thank you, Chris. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lamia Mekouar. I'm heading the Enterprise Portfolio Management Office at Laurentian Bank. I joined the Laurentian Bank about a year ago, and my mandate has been primarily focused on evolving that philosophy of execution of projects from the traditional PMO office, where we are still and we will continue using for quite a while the Waterfall methodology, but evolving it into a more adaptive or leaner organization. So we are trying to adapt, and it's still at infancy, the agile concept, trying to blend the best of the waterfall and the agile in the most efficient way. Over the last few months, for example, we have been working very closely with our partners in technology and in products in the digital transformation space mostly, to adopt the agile as we are rolling out some very important transformational initiative in the bank. So far, the results has been quite promising. So still a long way to go. It's definitely a journey, but we'll get there.
Well, fingers crossed. Last but not least, Ed.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. My name is Ed Heffer. I'm with Citibank Canada. I'm the director and head of the payments transformation PMO for Citi in Canada. So Citi uses primarily Agile for its internal technology projects, but similar to some of the other panelists, Citi will also tailor methodologies as needed according to the needs of the projects. Citi's obviously involved in a number of industry and regulatory initiated projects, and so when we get into those sort of fixed deliverable, fixed end date type projects, then we're really looking at how do we sort of tailor our agile methodologies to fit those needs.
Yeah, so I think we can all accept that we would all prefer to have one specific delivery model, which would be great to align. But the reality is, from your opening gambit, it's clear that it's not as pure in nature as we would like. So my first question to the panel, and David, I'll probably start with you. What are the factors and constraints driving your chosen delivery framework? And how best do we align, sync up, and harmonize with the other parties contributing in these payment programs?
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, we're very experienced in delivering products to clients, but in this environment, I heard a great analogy. Is that what we're trying to do with a financial institution is change the tires on a Formula One racing car as it's actually running around the track itself. And this is where I think organizations like Fiserv really come to their own, because guess what? We're the McLaren, we're the Ferrari, because we're doing this constantly. This is what we do for a living, is to work with a financial institution to change those tires as the car's going around. And I think that's a key item to consider, is that when we work with an organization, we do 5, 6, 7 of these projects a year. The organization we're working with probably does it once every 20 or 30 years. And so there's a level of experience. And I think we've adopted that hybrid approach because what we found is that getting access to the key SME, the subject matter experts within a financial institution is very difficult if we can't time box them. We want to be able to work on this part of the system with this operator for this period of time. Being able to highlight that a month in advance or 2 months in advance means that we can get hold of that resource, that they can be dedicated for a small period of time to focus on that particular area of the system. I think the other side of it is training. You know, we all have a different language. It doesn't matter which company we're working with. we'll all have our own internal language. We'll all have a different way of explaining and explaining the approach, what we need to do when we need to do it. So one of the things I learned very early on at Dovetail, once we had the product, first thing to do is to go in and actually install it, work with the operators, work with the IT department, and actually just let them play with it and tell them the language that we're going to use, so that when we got to, you know, business requirements or business outcomes, we could actually discuss that in the language that they would see in the system itself. I think that was a key learning very early on in the process, is time box and really get the right people at the right time with the language that's common between the two groups.
Yeah.
So that I think that was the key points there.
Yeah, I think access to SMEs is always a challenge, and you're right. Time boxing definitely gets it down into what is the least we can do to get this moving forward, and we'll figure out the rest later on. Ed, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I guess from a Citi side, so again, we do like using the agile methodology. We like getting those early deliverables. We like being able to see some of that value being delivered early. But at the same time, again, when we get into these industry type initiatives that have a fixed set of deliverables, we know the project needs to deliver on a set of requirements and by a set date. And so we're actually getting pretty comfortable sort of being able to combine those methodologies to sort of deliver the best of both worlds. I think an example that I would think of, and is probably one that's familiar to a number in the audience, is the Links launch last year for Citi. We did that one as a hybrid project. Again, so Payments Canada had a set of fixed deliverables in the form of the links clearing rules. So we knew what we needed to be able to hit as an MVP for the project. We had a very definite end date on when links was going live. This thing had better be working, and so sort of fitting our agile time boxes into those time frames and being able to work our sprints and our backlogs into that set of fixed deliverables actually worked out quite well for us. We were quite happy with the outcome, and by the end of it, we were able to take a set of requirements through those sprints and be able to confirm at the end that we had met all the requirements and that we were able to validate going through through the industry testing with the other participants. And so,
Yeah.
a good experience and a good outcome.
Yeah, I think the ability to kind of give a little bit of tolerance and allow for people to kind of settle in as a team, to create that predictability, and then reassessing and reviewing that predictable run rate, if you want, really makes it easier to get to it. But you've got to allow a little bit of flexibility in the early stages to let that learning curve kick in. And make the difference that you can actually rely upon a predictable date in the future, which is not going to move. Lamia, how have you done on yours?
From the context of Laurentian Bank, as most of you may have heard, the bank has been rolling out a new 5-point strategy. So we are definitely entering this execution mode where we need to constantly be demonstrating some results, be creating value for clients, for our employees, and most importantly, also building the trust internally and externally. So we thought that, and we strongly believe that shifting towards an agile mindset is one of the most optimal way to embody this execution, very focused execution mindset. And I can further elaborate on 3 perspectives maybe. So the first one is the communication. It's often very pervasive across all the organization. We need to be closing, especially in big financial institution, the communication gap. So I can bring an example that we recently launched as a project team. We are kicking off a payment lab. So what this lab intends is to assemble a self-organized team, like an agile team. It's still very, very early in the process, but it's going to be having a representation from a different group in the organization, which historically have been operating in the ecosystem of payments on a semi-silo, just due to the legacy structure. So now that we have this agile structure, or at least we are encouraging to have that agile mindset, is that the team going to be working towards one common roadmap, one unified product backlog, and will be able collectively to prioritize. The second perspective that I can mention is, and it's kind of like evidence when we speak about Agile, is that client centricity, which is very important for banks and financial institutions in general. So the Agile mindset is definitely training everybody in the team to think customer first. So it's from the design of the solution, having that acting on the rapid feedback, being quick at designing solution incrementally. And I think this is really, it fits perfectly the purpose of what we are trying to do in that 5-point strategy. And lastly, and it's back to what you said, Chris, about that predictability, is getting very specific in measuring the progress, is being very concrete when you communicate to the stakeholder how successful you are in implementing anything.
Yeah, I think this need to visualize and plan, but not too far in the future, enough for a while, is where scaled agile is really sort of cottoned onto this, where they do a 10 week or 5 sprint program increment planning, and can actually get everyone set and everyone visualizes exactly what that deliverable is going to be for the foreseeable future and then gets on with it. But you've got that alignment across the board. Yeah, I like that. Jessica, anything to add here?
Yeah, actually, similar to Laurentian, this is also an execution year for Interac. We have a number of, large scale, complex, highly strategic programs on the go this year, including the work that we're doing with Payments Canada to deliver the real-time rail exchange, which I imagine is probably very similar in the structure and approach to what Ed mentioned, and Citi kind of connecting as a direct participant to the link system. So there's just a huge focus on delivery excellence. And the reason why Interac has been investing in Agile is because it provides those tangible outcomes in areas that align with our core values and ethos. And Lamia just touched on it, but customer centricity is an important one, right? So Interac is actually sort of like the hub in the financial services ecosystem, where we have almost 300 financial institutions connected to our network. And we actually we're also recognized again this year as Canada's most trusted financial brand, with Canadians choosing to use Interac products on an average of 18 million times a day to pay and exchange money. So, with all of those things in mind, embracing a customer first mindset is just paramount for us, whether it's the end consumer or it's a financial institution. The goal is to put the customer at the center of everything that we do, and take a value driven approach to ensure that our customer expectations are not only met but far exceeded. And then another driving factor for us in using Agile is that it provides better risk mitigation. And this is absolutely critical when you're delivering programs that involve large budgets, and you've got a wide range of partners that you have to work with. And as I just mentioned, Interac is at that center of this huge network, working with issuers and acquirers and merchants, and all of whom are at varying stages of agile maturity and fluency, and all of who have different delivery frameworks of choice. So it does make a lot of things more complex. So there is a need to be very tightly coordinated in the work that we do. We need to be working very collaboratively with all of our partners, and building in, as Lamia mentioned, the early and frequent feedback loops to ensure that what we are doing is the right thing, and that we are better at utilizing our time and money so that we can focus on delivering immediate value to our customers. But as long as the overarching business outcomes and objectives are clearly defined, and all of the parties can align to it, regardless of the frameworks that are being used, it ensures that everyone is sort of working towards a common goal, which is the most important thing. And then one thing I also want to mention is, most importantly, we want our people to be happy and to find fulfillment and purpose in the work that they do at Interac. So employee engagement is a huge driving factor for us. And we are very much a people first culture at Interac. So, and we're also proud to be named Greater Toronto Top Employer for 2022. And we want to keep it that way. So providing our people with the environment that's sort of, conducive to improved sense of empowerment and autonomy and just overall satisfaction is a priority for us. And Agile is a means to get there.
Yeah, certainly encourages more participation. Thanks, Jessica. I think the key drivers that I'm hearing here in selecting a delivery framework have all been touched on. I've heard customer centricity. I've heard the desire to bring testing earlier, risk mitigation, and the need for continual alignment and synchronization. But I think regardless of each party's chosen delivery framework, sounds to me that the key lies in frequent collaboration and continual planning between all members of a program on a regular cadence, which will ensure all parties are informed, risks are identified as soon as possible, and challenges are circumvented before they even happen, perhaps. But given we're all in these programs currently and in the thick of it, let's reflect on the lessons learned for the audience and maybe provide some tips on how we can best mitigate the risks and challenges that are inherent with these multifaceted delivery models. Lamia, I know you're right in the middle of this, so I'm going to let you lead us off here.
Yeah, so three key takeaway from my perspective. Again, we're still at the early stage of that journey, but I have been gathering feedback from my team who has been very bravely and enthusiastically on the front row of this mini revolution that we are undertaking here at Laurentian. So I will leave you with this takeaway. Take change management very seriously. Like you have to take the time to plan it, to document it, to define success across all the partners and the stakeholders. The language of Agile is very diverse and everybody is coming from a very different background, different institution. So everybody has their own understanding. The second takeaway is to stay away from that assumption that everybody loves Agile, everybody understands and knows Agile, because it's not that true. We need to pay close attention to our partners, especially in the support function and control functions such as legal, finance, audit, strategic sourcing, compliance, risk, because we need to be helping them fine-tune their own tools, their own framework to adapt to the Agile. So at Laurentian, we have been rolling out a course demystifying Agile, like what Agile is and it's not. It's like one of the many series to come, but we received very positive feedback and it triggered the right curiosity. And the third takeaway, baby step. Take the time to choose your pilot initiative and be very mindful to observe the change and the resistance to change and recalibrate. So be patient.
Okay. Ed, your lessons?
Okay. So I'll take a slightly different focus area then. I think from a Citi perspective, we're spending some time really trying to sort of optimize our delivery solution, and so an area that we're spending some time on is really sort of looking within our testing programs. We do find that when we get sort of large complex projects for Agile, especially when you get sort of multiple teams working on Agile concurrently, delivering sprints in parallel. An area that we find that sort of really starts taking some of the pressure is in our testing test management, and so where we're getting those teams to really sort of spend the time is around sort of test automation, testing tools, and really sort of being able to automate a lot of what they do. Sort of something that a testing team can do manually with sort of one or two Agile teams, or very quickly sort of falls behind when you get sort of 3, 4, 5 Agile teams all delivering sprints concurrently. And so that those challenges of sort of continuous integration, being able to do automated regression testing, being able to sort of keep up with validation within the sprint cycles and be able to log the defects in a timely manner, those really become a lot of sort of the gating factors to being able to have your program sort of keeping up with the sort of the value that Agile sort of bringing to your project. If your testing teams can't keep up, then really sort of the whole thing sort of grinds to a halt fairly quickly. And so we've had a lot of success there. We're sort of really happy with where our testing teams have gotten to, and once you see those tools starting to perform, then you can really start seeing the value of the agile programs coming together. I think the other areas that when we're talking about hybrid models sort of on top of agile, um, then we're really sort of looking at trying to layer on some of that traceability that doesn't necessarily come natively to agile, but being able to do that traceability, again, sort of going back to that fixed set of requirements, sort of going through your backlog, through your sprints, through your defect tracking, and sort of coming out the other end to do that confirmation that all those requirements were delivered, and that all of your as you went through those sprints, all of those validations were completed. And so that's sort of another area that we spent some time on, really trying to hone those capabilities. And so, and again, we've found that both of those areas are again, so really getting us to a place where we want to be around agile.
Yeah, I think having these kinds of tools is really important. But what I've noticed a lot with a number of my clients is different teams get different tools and it creates greater confusion. So I think you've got to find a way to standardize to make it easier for people to move between teams. But you're right, tools are really important. Things like regression testing start to become a big saver in time and risk mitigation. Jessica?
Yeah, actually, Lamia and Ed bring up great points, and I just want to build on it. Effective change management is so critical, especially when you've got, broad-based transformation taking place. And I can tell you from my experience with the agile transformation at Interac that, training and sort of David touched on it earlier, like the language that you're using and having a common understanding, communication, having the right tools, just like Ed mentioned, are all extremely important. But what I found is that if people don't necessarily understand the changes to their roles within the new way of working, it just all comes crashing down. So for me, having clearly defined roles, and ensuring that every team member and all impacted stakeholders clearly understand what they and each other are responsible for and how it all fits into the bigger picture is probably one of the most important lessons that I've taken away. And this goes beyond just simple role training, right? Like a 1 day PowerPoint session on what a product owner does, or like, the 3 day Scrum Master certification isn't going to magically make someone an effective product owner or a Scrum Master the next day, right? So you really need to provide people with that ongoing support through coaching and mentoring, communities of practice, and other frequent touch points for learning, so that you can provide people with the environment to continue to grow into their role and also be able to sharpen their skills on a day-to-day basis. And then the next big lesson, actually, an extension to that, is that, having just clearly defined roles and providing people with the learning opportunities isn't enough. Because what I've learned is that if the environment within which these people are working in is not set up in a manner that enables them to succeed in their roles, they're ultimately going to fail, right? So this is sort of like that classic example of agile being an experiment within the technology department, and then you start to try and scale it, but then you start to bump up against other areas within the organization that haven't yet adopted this new way of working. So then you have all these internal clashes, and all these problems coming up. So really, for agile to be truly effective, it requires a broader paradigm shift, and it requires changes to operating models and organizational structure, which are definitely harder nuts to crack for sure, but definitely worth doing in order to fully enable teams to be successful in their new roles and actually enjoy what they're doing and unlock the full benefits of agile. And then probably the last piece that I think is like very, very important, and probably one of the harder things to do, is um, you have to be able to build continuous improvement and learning into the culture of teams, and within the DNA of the organization as a whole. Because everything and anything should be open to inspection and change, including the delivery frameworks that are being used, including the practices that are being used, because what once worked for us yesterday may not necessarily cut it for today or tomorrow, for that matter, right? So without that mindset of continually questioning these kinds of things and challenging the status quo, you end up continuing to do something that isn't really serving a purpose anymore, or you're doing something that is suboptimal to what is needed today. So by continuing to inspect and adapt, you're able to eliminate anything that's really unnecessary in terms of tasks or processes, or even, identify new ways of or better ways of doing it. For example, through automation. And in the end, what it does is allows people to be able to focus on the real value adding work, right? Stuff that people want to show up to work to do, that's interesting and exciting for them, and not be occupied with sort of like the mundane, busy stuff. And in the long run, what it does is it allows, it pays dividends in improved employee engagement and satisfaction. It allows teams to be more effective and productive, and have better performance, and ultimately it allows the organization to have better investment in the time and money.
Yeah, I'm loving your point about the broader organization, because it's always a challenge trying to get peripheral teams like marketing, HR, and finance kind of bought into the way that these programs need to operate with flexibility and some sort of resilience in play, and the ability to respond quickly to ecosystem stimuli as they approach the program, because these things come up and the program team needs to flex quickly, and yet the need to do that is always like stymied by the peripheral teams, right? But anyway, David, just by the way, folks, I haven't had any questions coming through. I'm hoping by now we've evoked some. But so if you do have a question on mind, please start hitting the Ask the Speaker. It won't actually be me answering. I'll give it to one of these guys. And while you're doing that, David, can I ask you your lessons and in this space? Have we missed anything out so far?
Yeah, I think we've covered a great deal. I'd like to sort of just focus on something that Ed raised in terms of multiple teams. Obviously, as a vendor, we get to work very closely with our clients, partners, and we're almost a team in ourselves. And I think one of the key things is to get the right people at the right time, to get the right experience, the right experts together at the right time. A lot of the time, it's been, well, you're working with this group, so one of this group will be able to help. Actually, you're not. You're looking for very specific skills, very specific experience to work on a particular part of the problem going forward. So, number one, getting the right resources at the right time. That needs a lot of pre-planning. I talked about that hybrid approach. You need to understand where you're trying to get to at which point in the project, and therefore which resources you need. I think it was Lamia that raised the flexibility, the change management. As a provider of solutions, we have a product. That product works in a specific way. It's been honed over the years to work that way. And there'll be a contract in place to provide that solution with a number of interfaces or a number of very specific changes. And that's how the project starts. And as you work through it, trying to understand what a change is and therefore how it's going to impact the actual flow is another critical one. I think Ed raised the links program. I think one of the great things about flexibility, and it's coming through at the moment, is the migration to ISO 20022. A lot of organizations saw that as just a message change. We're converting from a proprietary format into an ISO 20022 format, and that's a payments problem. Forgetting that, guess what? All this structured address information has to come from somewhere and has to go somewhere. All of this party information has to go through a sanctions check, a complete new financial crime system, and then all this beautiful remittance data has to actually get somewhere, has to be used, has to link to something else. So all of a sudden, these programs have gone from, well, we know what the fix is because on this date we're going to be receiving ISO 20022 messages, to actually this is a bigger project, bigger program, and needs a lot more flexibility. So, these really complex date-driven programs that you would maybe look at it in a waterfall perspective, potentially need that hybrid approach, because you have to get back down to the minimum viable product. What do I need across the whole organization? Because we need to get that thing up and running and meet the date and meet those external drivers. And I think that really then focuses on having that really, really strong governance in place with the right people who have the authority to make the changes, working with all the partners in the organization and externally, coming together as a team, a partnership to drive this forward.
Okay. So out of the sort of the topical questions, and I'll move on to the ones that have been posted in a moment, but just a couple of interesting tips or key takeaways that I'm hearing to summarize is we shouldn't be standing on ceremony or fixing on one particular thing. We should be prepared to change and flex as we need to. Build in flexibility mechanisms deliberately to ensure that we're resilient for the unexpected. Continual improvement, the adoption of a lean mindset with our agile thinking by always questioning, is this process producing the desired outcome? Planning should be for the foreseeable, achievable future with the occasional reality check at the summit, no pun intended, or the ultimate goal, to the overall, to ensure overall program effectiveness. And then lastly, with increased transparency, synchronized relative planning, everything within relation to each other, roles and milestone clarity came up. A mixed delivery framework will provide complete visibility into the work that is in the queue, work that is in progress, and work that is on the backlog and will be completed in the future, which will enable us to sort of deal with the risk as they arise. So with that, I'm just going to look at some of the questions we've got here. The one that has come up interestingly is how does one build greater trust between business and development communities? Lamia, I think you're probably best on this one. Maybe others will chip in as well. You're on mute.
I think one of the best way to build that trust is definitely having that alignment, not only from the incentives perspective, so organizationally have it like on the scorecard, the same metrics, but also trying, and Jessica mentioned it earlier, that importance of having the roles very clear on who is accountable and who is responsible for what in the life cycle of this initiative, of any initiative we are doing. What we have seen is there are like some special windows in that relationship across all the stakeholders, especially in the business community and the development community, which is during a crisis situation when nothing seems to work actually. And this is where you should be taking that opportunity as like a lead in that lab or in that agile setup or hybrid setup to demonstrate that we are all here in together, where it's not about finger pointing. It's about resolving and moving forward. And I think this is when the leaders of the team try to recognize that and build solution on how to move forward and unblock, this is the best way to actually build that trust and long-lasting trust.
Okay. Anyone else got anything to add to that?
Yeah, if you don't mind. I shouldn't be saying this, having been on the business side for my 35 years in payments, but I think there is one area where business and IT do tend to sort of have a little bit of friction, is when business look at current processing that, the outcome is actually the process that I'm going through at the moment, maybe a little bit better here or a little bit better there. But they're explaining the process, the number of requirements I see, which are actually just a process flow. I think in the business perspective, what we have to get better at is saying, this is the outcome. this is what we need to achieve, and have the confidence in IT to actually develop that, rather than trying to get them to rebuild what we've already got. But to actually focus, and then you get the best out of the innovation, the best out of the skill sets that come through, is to say, this is the outcome I want. This is what I need to achieve from a business perspective, and not worry too much about how they change to get to that point. I think that's been a really big learning from the business side.
Yeah, and
Can
also
I add
just
to it, Chris?
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a slightly different take, I guess, a different perspective than David. I think for me, the crux of the problem is sort of encapsulated within the actual question itself, right? Like, it's the fact that we have business and we have development or IT, and they're sort of like identified as two separate teams, when really what they should be doing is, working as one. And there should be some sort of common, bigger objective that they are all working towards, that helps everyone sort of move in the right direction. And regardless of the challenges or the arguments that come up of like, what should we do? Should we do something this way or that way? As long as it aligns to that bigger objective, everyone should be sort of, playing on the same team and kind of working together to support that broader goal, right? So I think that is a thing that a hurdle that we need to get over, is we need everyone to understand that we're all working for one company. We're all working on the same team, and we're all working towards the same goal. So there shouldn't be the separation of like, your business and I am development and we do different things. We are all working towards one thing.
Yeah, I think we could actually extend that into a program wide, when you've got multiple companies coming in to a program, right? And everyone's going, well, you should be there and we should be here, and where are you? And there's a lot of finger pointing, and this sort of lack of acknowledgement that if you fail, I fail. And if I fail, you fail, because we don't go live, right? And I think that's what people struggle to kind of get to the bottom of. They're so busy pointing fingers with these things that it's easier if someone just like, I don't really care how we got here, but we're all in it together. Let's row forward, right? And I think that's a, you can take that whole concept up a level between entities, not only within an entity, business and tech, right? Okay.
And sorry, Chris, I guess just to throw in the last perspective, I guess sort of throw in the agile plug. I think the other thing, just with that early delivery and continuous delivery of functionality, I think that also sort of helps build that trust. It's actually sort of making some of these things tangible sooner to some of those people that may not be as close to the technology solution as the technology team. So again, just sort of if we're that usage of agile and some of those early sprints, being able to sort of turn out some of that early code and be able to sort of knock off some of those test cases, and seeing that early progress sort of really sort of makes the conversation move from the theoretical to the concrete much more easily.
Okay. There's another question here that's asking, the discussion has been around the strength of Agile. Is the panel view that a complete transformation to Agile for all projects is the desired goal? I'm going to just run with this one and say no, that's not what we're saying. We're saying what we're talking about really is, how do we best make sure that Agile can accommodate an integrated plan from a waterfall across multiple entities. I don't think that's necessarily the case. There are a number of project types that will require a waterfall nature, especially when you're coordinating multiple entities at the same time. Anyone got something to add there very quickly, because we've got to close up?
I think just quickly, and this may be a contentious view, but I guess from my perspective, I view Agile as a software development methodology rather than a program management methodology. And so I think sometimes contrasting Waterfall and Agile is not a sort of a real apples to apples comparison. And so obviously, so within software development, Agile works well, but there's lots of projects outside of software development where you're looking for something else.
Okay. All right, folks, I think we've got to shut off now quickly. So I'm just going to thank you for your time and thanks for participating. If you need to reach out to any of us, or you've got a problem that we can help you with, please look at the summit agenda to see who we are and where we work. Otherwise, reach out to us on LinkedIn. But without any further ado, I'd like to wish you good times for the final few moments of the summit, and enjoy the rest of it. And thanks to my panelists. Thanks, guys, for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.